Seeing as the theme of this video is going to be honesty, let me first make a personal statement because I haven't been around for quite some time. Wow, I mean, I have no idea where to begin. I guess we can start with where I've been and what happened since my last video. To put it very simply, 2014 was an awful year for almost everybody and anything. There was terrorism, war, and waves of ugly, stupid, just retardation intruding into almost everything and everybody's lives, ultimately culminating in me just walking away from the internet in disgust for a little while. I've basically abandoned all my social media accounts. I will probably get back on Facebook soon, but my Twitter is gonna stay deleted, and I've basically been sitting here quite depressed about the human condition lately. Though at this stage, what person paying attention to all of this wouldn't be depressed about the human condition? I mean, I normally try and speak from a place of objectivity, logic and reason, but I don't even know how such things are even possible anymore in the current climate. It's nothing but hostility, and then worse than that, money or attention whoring. And it's everywhere you look, and it all sprung up overnight. My shit list has grown so epically long that I need a separate shit list just to list my shit list. I've just been sitting here on my hands for 4 months straight just going, what? It's like a never-ending asshole conveyor belt, a luggage carousel with idiots just spinning around and around and around, and it's a little difficult to do anything but just stare in horror as ever more reprehensible examples of the human species advance before me. We are so far beyond just reasonable discussion on journalism, reasonable discussion on anything, and also the impacts of these things on society, and we're just so deep in the rabbit hole now that I've only one option. I'm coming back to try and bring some sanity to these savage lands. In less flowery language, I'm going to be making videos, and I'm going to keep making videos until either A, I die, or B, one of my new self-declared, self-selected enemies finally grows a testicular fortitude to come and finish the fucking job. So, to keep the bitching to content ratio down and to mark my return to YouTube as if I haven't made quite enough enemies, I want to talk about things on a different kick. I'm going to talk about a well-loved figure in the atheist community online. Because hey, why not? This is of course sure to win me epic levels of adulation and upvotes, or more realistically endless quantities of tears and misunderstandings in my comment sections. To any and all that plan on misinterpreting what I'm saying, I shall say this only once, and this is located only a few minutes into the video for your convenience here. If you're going to comment on a video, just please watch it first. Now, to understand the full story, because that is my way here, we have to go back to some recent YouTube drama. Now, as far as drama is concerned, this was quite a damp squib, but nevertheless the two parties involved were the ever-charming, amazing atheist, and love him or hate him, the heavy metal queen of the YouTube gaming community himself, XX Razorfist XX. Now, seeing as this is going to be a video dealing with the controversy only marginally, distantly, tangentially related to religion, I have to make a massive disclaimer here in Comic Sans for extra evil and emphasis, and I'm going to read it to you very, very slowly so that everybody understands this. No, I am not saying that science isn't valid somehow, or that the person in question should be fired or disbelieved in every instance of everything they've ever said, or anything ridiculous like that, and neither am I flacking for religion or a deity or a non-deity or anything of that nature. I don't care what religion or irreligion you hold. I'm simply here bringing attention to facts relating to this person that have had no attention. Okay, thanks. Now, you've probably noticed that I'm dancing a pretty little Charleston around who I'm going to be talking about in this video, mainly because it's someone I actually like and respect too. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Intellectual honesty sure as a bitch. Anyway, back to the drama. In a nutshell, what happened was that Neil deGrasse Tyson made a tweet on Christmas about celebrating Isaac Newton's birthday. This upset some Twitter users, though upon reflection almost anything upsets some Twitter users. In the highly important and enlightened conversation that followed, Razorfist made a comment basically calling Tyson a preachy televangelist or something of that nature. Now, of course, he's entitled to express his own opinion. He's entitled to not like Neil deGrasse Tyson. But that's not the interesting part. No, what happened next was that the cutting-edge journalist over at Inquisitor.com decided to put Razorfist's tweet out of context with a bunch of offended Christians who were responding to Neil deGrasse Tyson, even though Razorfist wasn't. This was then typically picked up by the Amazing Atheist as a sole source for his video, talking about why the tweets were stupid, and he ended up including Razor's tweet in his video. This looped back into good old-fashioned YouTube drams when Razorfist made a response to him explaining more in detail about why he simply doesn't like Neil deGrasse Tyson. The drama was basically over right there, as TJ apologized for taking him out of context, and basically all was forgiven, and he appeared on TJ's podcast shortly thereafter. Now, the sources that Razorfist initially used were, to not put too fine a point on it, shit. And this was picked up on in the comment section, that most of his sources contained biased hissy fits against Neil deGrasse Tyson. However, if you follow those articles' sources, there is indeed some very interesting information about what Razorfist was talking about. It's just buried one layer deep. So the basic thrust of these accusations, these accounts about Neil deGrasse Tyson, is that a few of the details of several stories that he has told in public talks, which people have paid to attend, by the way, at things like atheist conventions, such as The Amazing Meeting, have been fuzzy at best and downright false at worst. And when you really get down to it, there are really three separate independent incidents where this has been shown to happen. But first, before I can get into the facts, I need to actually look at the source that these facts come from, because in this case, for once, that's actually important. Now, I normally never consider the source, because that's ad hominem. For example, I once had a PETA supporter, and don't worry, I'm actually working on a right royal arse kicking for PETA that's going to come out shortly, deny the fact that PETA murder upwards of 80% of the animals that PETA intake, based on official state documents nonetheless, because the source I linked to was actually run by a right-wing think tank with interest in animal exploitation, thus missing the point of my argument spectacularly. However, getting back on track, it's important to point out that Sean Davis, the journalist who has written all of these articles, is a journalist who writes for The Federalist, which he was the co-founder of, which is a decidedly right-wing publication. He's also a former Rick Perry staffer. In fact, he's about as right-wing a pundit as you can get. He's a Republican through and through. Now, I bring this up to head off potentially terrible arguments about, well, he's bound to bring up these things to discredit Tyson because he's a repub, because that's wrong on several levels. Firstly, it's a circumstantial ad hominem attack, but also Tyson was actually an advisor to George W. Bush during his reign, by the way. Anyway, I'm just gonna be looking at Sean Davis's facts, not his opinions here, and I will try and keep his opinions out of it as best I can. In fact, I'll go one better than that and use the quotes that I'm going to be quoting here straight from an atheist blog site, The Friendly Atheist, who did a review of these accusations himself a few months ago, which is also linked down below. So as I mentioned before, there were three separate incidents of this happening that have been investigated by Sean Davis. There might be more, who knows. So the first noted by Davis was two quotes in a talk given by Tyson at The Amazing Meeting in 2012. He said, and I'm quoting from the Friendly Atheist site here, that a member of Congress said, "I've changed my views 360 degrees on that issue," and that a newspaper headline in New York City read, "Half the schools in the district are below average." Now, Sean Davis investigated both of these quotes and he couldn't find them anywhere. After more digging, he eventually found the source as being a senator who had said something similar but not exactly that quote a few years before. The second quote, however, is just, well, weird. Firstly, there's no record of this being a newspaper headline in New York or anywhere, as far as anyone knows, and not only that, but to anyone who knows statistics, if the data set in question conformed to the normal distribution, then roughly 50% of the data would be below the average. Pick one: median, mode, mean. and most of it of course would fall within 3 standard deviations. That's kind of one of the main characteristics of a normal distribution. It is symmetrical, so that just seems kind of weird. Anyway, the second misquote is more of an allegation of a misquote, and it's more of just a weird anomaly than the others. But Sean Davis looked into a story that Tyson often tells about a time he was on jury duty and he was kicked out for upsetting a numerically illiterate judge. Davis notes the fact that across 4 or so retellings of the story, the numbers just plainly seem to change, and this is a bit weird, and that's about the entire thrust of that one. The story has inconsistencies in numbering. And the final incident, which is the most interesting one and the one that has garnered the most attention and is by far something which seems to be rather well known and used in memes around the internet, is actually his misquoting of former President George W. Bush. And it of course has to be said that of all the presidents in history to misquote, misquoting the one who has the biggest record of saying incredibly silly shit in public is an accomplishment in and of itself. So the quote in question is from Tyson's presentation at another The Amazing Meeting event, and it is as follows.
George Bush, within a week of this, gave us a speech attempting to distinguish we from they. And who are they? These were sort of the Muslim fundamentalists. And he wants to distinguish we from they. And how does he do it? He says, okay? He says, our God, of course, it's actually the same God. But that's a detail. Let's hold that minor fact aside for the moment. Allah of the Muslims is the same God as the God of the Old Testament. So, but let's hold that aside. He says, our God is the God, he's loosely quoting Genesis, biblical Genesis. Our God is the God who named the stars.
Sean Davis did some very extensive checking of this, going so far as to ask previous George Bush speechwriters who he's in contact with if they recalled the quote, which they didn't, and after much ado he managed to actually track its source down to a speech George Bush didn't give after 9/11, but instead gave in the wake of the Columbia Space Shuttle tragedy back a few years ago. It had absolutely nothing to do with the war on terror or Islam or anything else for that matter. Take a look.
The same Creator who names the stars also knows the names of the 7 souls we mourn today.
Now, because I'm not a multi-billion-dollar media conglomerate who's running a 24-hour news show, I can actually afford to take the time to tell both sides of the story here, instead of picking a clear side and painting them as poor, innocent victims of terror, regardless of what they have done, stripping all nuance, context, and balance out of my reporting in the process. In other words, I'm also going to feature the way Tyson responded and link to his side of the story. I'm not going to go through all of it because it's just pretty damn long, but I'll do a quick summary of what I got out of them, and you can read it all for yourself and take what you will out of them below as always. So his first responses to the allegations came via email, and then there was a Discuss account that allegedly belonged to him making some comments on the articles. But the ones I want to look at are the public ones that came in via his Facebook page. So his first response to the allegations on Facebook came off as, to me at least, somewhat evasive and dismissive. He basically tried to defend his misquote by saying that just because no one can prove that George Bush said it doesn't mean that he didn't, which isn't the very strong way to start an argument, and he completely ignores the burden of proof there, really. The rest of his response is basically trying to contextualize the misquote and trying to, build a case for it being true in context somehow, but all in all, he doesn't do a great job of digging himself out of the allegations, and he doesn't make any type of apology or really acknowledge what people were saying at all. In his second Facebook response, he finally apologized for misquoting George W. Bush, which I would contend is all that anyone who had reasonable good intent, at least, wanted from him in the first place. He does of course make some weird statements though, like he compares the people who investigated him, like Sean Davis and numerous others, to lawyers sort of digging through someone's history trying to find a way to smear them, which wasn't the case at all as far as I understand the situation. And just for the record, in my personal opinion, Tyson is human like everybody else and he makes mistakes like everybody else. I don't see any of this as being evidence of genuine malfeasance on his part. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see that he was trying to deliberately mislead people or was bending the truth to attack religion. After all, most of the quotes had nothing to do with religion. They had more to do with things like innumeracy. However, as the friendly atheist says, when you pay money to see someone talk, you do expect that what they are saying will be correct and have a basis in fact. So he should be accountable to some degree, like everybody else, and there shouldn't be a magical exception made for him, because if anyone else was dishonest, they would instantly be called out on it. This would be everywhere, but because it's him, people are making undue exceptions. That is my opinion. There is also a whole lot more to the story in terms of what happened with Wikipedia and a lot of changes to the Neil deGrasse Tyson page being reverted in the wake of this incident, but all of those basically boil down to internet drama and differences of opinions. They are linked down below so you can read them, but I'm not going to go into those in detail because that is far too opinion based for what I do on this channel. Nevertheless, the ball is now in your court. I have given you all the information that I have. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. If you don't care about it, don't care about it. If you care about it, care about it. I'm not your lord and savior or dictator. I simply give information. And so it appears that my work here is done. All that is left to do is to sit back and await the r/atheism brigading. There will be a new video coming very soon, and that's an oath sworn in blood. I am back full time now. To all my friends, my fans, and everyone else who supported me over the last few troubled months and basically the entire year of 2014, thank you for always being there for me, even if I wasn't always there for you. I'm DA. Thanks for subscribing, and as always,
good night and good luck.